Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to call to order the Truckee Meadows. This always confuses me. It's sort of like 580 and 395. It'll always be 395, and it'll always be Washoe Med. It's the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Board of Directors for Tuesday, March 1st. Welcome to March, 10 a.m. We will start with the salute to the flag. Mr. Greg Jackson, will you lead us, sir?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know, I want to thank you, sir. And before we get to a roll call, you know, we just said our pledge to the flag. We live in the greatest country in the world. Will you join me in a moment of silence for the people in Ukraine? Thank you so much. Forgive me, it makes me sad. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Vaughn Hartung, Chair.
Here.
Alexis Hill, Vice Chair. Here. Bob Lucy is absent. Kitty Jung. Present. Jeannie Harmon. Here. Fire Chief Charles Moore.
Here.
Deputy District Attorney Wade Karner.
Present.
And I'm Chief Deputy Clerk Kathy Smith. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Item number 3 is public comment. Chief, will you take us into public comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Item 3, public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items, with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk, would you call public comment, please? Okay.
No one is signed in?
Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Okay, I will close public comment. And forgive me, I am turning off my phone. I don't know whether you guys realize my car warranty just expired. I'm sure they're going to call me. Madam Clerk, would you please note that Commissioner Lucy has arrived?
We will do.
That takes us, Chief, to item number 4, Commissioners and Fire Chiefs announcements. Chief, take us into that, please.
Item 4 is Commissioners, Fire Chiefs announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda, and no discussion among commissioners will take place on this item.
Chief, do you have any such items? I know you want to take a couple of items out of order. Would you tell me what you want to do with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take 8 and 9 ahead of item 7, please.
Okay. So noted. Is that all, Chief?
That is it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any comments? Okay, Commissioner Hill, because I probably have the same comment as you, but I'm going to let you go because this is your, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, I wanted to just commend our chief and also this board for all their work on helping the Black Springs Volunteer Fire Station become the Northern Nevada African American Fire Museum. We had an event this Saturday. It was really special, and I hope that people take the time to come down and visit this station. It's an incredible part of our Northern Nevada history, and I just wanted to say thank you to this board for your support.
Do you happen to recall the address, Commissioner?
It's on Kennedy.
218 Kennedy.
There you go.
And so if you're going out 395 north, old 395 north, it's in just past Lemon Valley Drive, just past that light where it intersects with old 395. You take a right, and it's down on the left-hand side, which would be the north side of Kennedy. It was wonderful. It was a well-attended event. Commissioner, thank you for your support for that group. They're so appreciative, and you know, you probably all have heard me say this. The only thing new in the world is the history that you don't know, and I think it's important for us to understand that our area is rich with history. I lived out in Horizon Hills many years ago before my wife and I got married. This year will be 38 years, and I never knew that there was a fire station out there, and I feel bad about that because it's a beautiful little station. And so please go out there and have a look. It'll surprise you. It's very nice. Commissioners, anyone else? Okay, all right. I will close item number 4 and take it to item number 5. Chief, consent. Please take us in.
Item 5 is consent, items A and B.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions on the consent agenda? I'm looking to entertain a motion. Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Jung, second by Commissioner Harmon. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on this item?
There is not.
Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Chief, take us into item number 6.
Item 6 is an International Association of Firefighters Local 2487 report, and Pat Walsh, president, is up. Jamie Rivera will be here to give the report.
Mr. Rivera, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jamie Rivera, Vice President, Local 2487. Just basically I'm here for Walsh because he had some babysitting issues. But either way, we did have a plan so you guys can see different faces of the e-board, so you guys know who you guys are talking to. Just first off, just want to say thank you to the men and women of Truckee Meadows Fire for the last year and a half with the pandemic and stuff. You've seen tireless work, them working tirelessly, all stations, keeping all the stations open, and basically keeping the service that we all deserve. So I just want to give a shout out to those guys. Negotiations are ongoing, and then the other thing that I got is, since everything is starting to pretty much finalize and come back to normal, I got to give a shout out to John Seaman and friends for setting back up the annual charity tournament for the golf tournament for the Guns and Hoses. That's going on Monday, April 25th. So if you guys golf, or if you guys pretend to golf like I do, you guys should sign up. It's a good event, and it goes to it benefits the North Nevada Children's Cancer Foundation. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'll be gladly to answer. If not, that's all I got.
It's at this point that I would normally tell a dad joke about golf, but I'm going to forego that so as not to get yelled at by Commissioner Lucy, because I only get 3 a day. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Rivera?
Thanks.
Okay,
Hearing none.
Just to
Please.
what are the dates? What's the dates on the Guns and Hoses event again, Jamie?
25th.
The 25th. For those of you who have never participated in this event, even if you're not a golfer, it's a fun event. It's a phenomenal event for Washoe County as a whole. Not just do our TM firefighters participate, but our Washoe County sheriffs participate, Reno Fire, also our RPD. It's a lot of great people to come out, support the community, and it's all for a wonderful cause. You know, children's cancer, what you guys do for children's cancer is amazing. So please, if you find time in your day, I know it's tough, it's in the middle of the week, but come out. Oh, it's not the middle of the week, it's Monday, but come on out, try to support the cause. These guys do a great job. It's always fun, and congratulations. Thanks for doing all you guys do for that.
Thank you. You guys have nothing? Thank you.
no, thank you for supporting children's cancer. That's amazing. What a great cause. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, Chief, you've asked to move item 7. That would now take us into item 8, promotional announcements. Take us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to step down to the podium, and we'll take 8 and 9 concurrently, if you don't mind.
Okay, we will open up 8 and 9.
So thank you for reminding me, Mr. Chairman, that I failed to introduce one of our new employees, Rasheed Pagan, who joins us now as a full-time employee in the HR division. So I wanted to introduce her. She got the position through a competitive process. So she's no longer a temporary, but she's now full-time. So we want to welcome Rochelle. And as we've doubled in size over the last 10 years, you know why we need a robust HR department. So
Welcome, Michelle. Would you like to say anything?
speech?
Good, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for being in our organization.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, now we have some promotional announcements and badge pinning. Shall we bring everybody up together? I want to introduce Brian Haley, who's been promoted to fire captain, Miguel Orduna, who's been promoted to fire captain, Kyle Andres, who's promoted to fire engineer, and Austin Stowe, who is promoted to fire engineer.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Chief. Before we get on with the promotions, I know everybody's standing up here. I did want to recognize, with the growth that we have promotions, we also have attrition.
Please identify yourself.
This morning, Gary Garrett
For the record. Thank
had
you.
25 years of service and retired. I just wanted to say congratulations to him and wish him the best of luck with whatever his journeys are. So for the promotions, we do have first Captain Brian Haley. He graduated from Team CC Regional Fire Academy in 2008. He started his career with the Slide Mountain Hand Crew, working 4 seasons before being hired with Truckee Meadows in 2012. He has an associate's degree in fire science and a bachelor's in general studies. He's on numerous committees and projects with the organization. And I'm sorry, but I had to slim it down. He helped develop and leads the Truckee Meadows Engineer Development School. He used to oversee our cardiac monitor program. He's been a hazmat team member since 2012 when we first stood up. He led and managed the most recent engineer's promotional exam, which he did an excellent job on. He's also assisted with the development of the Probationary Firefighters Handbook and Hitting the Line class. He's on our telestaff committee, and he's a member of Local 2487Z board, and that's slimmed down. So during his career, he's received the Have a Heart Award and the St. Mary's Clinical Excellent Award. Brian's wife, Monet, will be pinning him today.
So when we get done, we'll save the applause and everything, so no, you guys don't leave once you're pinned.
Next, we have Captain Miguel Orduna. Captain Orduna is originally from a small city in central Mexico. His family migrated to the United States when he was 8 years old, where they settled in Yerington, Nevada. Captain Orduna began his firefighting career with Mason Valley Fire Protection District as a volunteer, and in 2011, he was hired full-time by Mason Valley. He became a member of Truckee Meadows in 2012 as a firefighter. He was promoted to engineer in 2014 and the position of captain in 2022. He's a member of our operations committee. He's an SCBA technician, and he's also on our safety committee. The other thing I wanted to highlight about Captain Orduna is he's been an active member for the last 12 years as a coach for soccer and softball, I'm sorry. And currently he is coaching his daughter's team, so good luck. His wife, Megan, will be pinning him today. Next, we have Engineer Austin Stowe. Engineer Stowe is originally from Salt Lake City, Utah. He moved to San Diego for college and completed paramedic school in 2004. Once completing paramedic school, Engineer Stowe started his career with REMSA, working as a paramedic from 2005 to 2007. He was then hired by the Carson City Fire Department as a firefighter paramedic and worked there until 2017. In 2017, Engineer Stowe was hired by Truckee Meadows as a firefighter paramedic. The committees that he's on, he's a hazmat team member, he's on our peer support team, and he also assisted with the development for our probationary staff for the handbook and Hitting the Line class. Austin's wife, Nicole, and his daughter, McKenna, will be pinning him today.
I did not write Nicole.
Uh-oh.
And last but not least, we have Engineer Kyle Endres. After graduating high school in 2001, Engineer Endres entered the Explorer program with the City of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue. He worked for AMR from 2005 to 2009 as an EMT and a paramedic. In 2009, he started working for REMSA as a paramedic, and in 2013, he was hired by Truckee Meadows Fire as a firefighter paramedic. He promoted to engineer in 2022. Some of the committees and programs that he's on, I also had to slim yours down. So he's on our EMS committee, the WET team member, he's a hazmat team member, he's a paramedic preceptor, he's involved in our new hiring testing, he's on our QA/QI chart review, he's also assisted with the district's annual apparatus pump test program. Kyle's wife, Bailey, will be pinning him today.
And I believe that's everyone, isn't it?
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Would, Chief, before we move on, can we get a picture with, I know it's up and down. Bob, are you going to be okay? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, Adam, give us some guidance. What do you want us to do, Adam? Do you want us to double up? Thank you all. Awesome. So, Mr. Chairman, we have
Well, I did, but Chris Ketron took it. Chris, you took my script.
Okay, Chief. That takes us now to, we opened both employee awards recognition. Go ahead.
This organization wouldn't run as good as it does without dedicated employees who do good work each and every day. So it's important that we recognize the good work that they do. So I wanted to present the Golden Axe Award to Chris Black and Ron Harmon. And Chris Black, Captain Chris Black, is the heart and soul of our partnership with the Nevada Donor Network. He's the employee who really got that going and established our relationship with Nevada Donor Network. Because of his dedication and commitment, TMFR is the leading fire agency when it comes to facilitating tissue and cornea donations, and has been for the last 7 years. That benefits families all across the state. Chris also understands the need for continuous improvement and recently brought us the Echelon Front training opportunity. And Chris is a dedicated fire captain who always goes above and beyond to include serving as operations committee chair, coordinating officer, development school, and off-duty trainings of our members. So Chris, I can't attest to his haircut, but nevertheless, he's a good guy.
Chief, he could say the same about yours.
This is true. Congratulations. Just stay up. At least he has a full head of hair. And I am also pleased to present the Golden Axe Award to engineer and paramedic Ron Harmon. Ron, there you are. Engineer Harmon dedicated a substantial amount of time last year on our COVID-19 vaccine operations. Ron was particularly helpful in building relationships with outside agencies and organizations. He routinely showed up off-duty at events to ensure additional assistance was not required. And Ron continues to show a great attitude and a high level of professionalism, and I appreciate his service to the community and to our organization. And if his name wasn't Ron, I would nickname him as Steady Eddie.
You know, gentlemen, we're deeply appreciative of the work that you do outside the organization. you, Chris, probably know how dear the donor network is to my own family. So I'm very thankful for your work and everything that you've done there. So thank you. And if there's anything that this board can do to support, please let us know. And we're happy to do it. Commissioners, I know this is up and down, but how would you like to do it?
We've got three.
Three more, and then we'll do the pictures, Chief? Okay, don't
So
go
I'm
anywhere,
also pleased to
gentlemen.
recognize Captain Pat Daggett, who is retired and comes to us complete in retirement gear. Captain,
Captain, can you leave your fishing pole in the back? All right.
Captain Nate Harrison and Captain Brian Haley with the Meritorious Conduct Award. These individuals have worked tirelessly to build and conduct an exemplary driver training program, which is what we call it the Engineer Development School, EDS. They've routinely stayed the course and remained engaged even during off times from training to ensure the district's training program builds off its successes and failures to produce highly trained and qualified personnel to drive and operate our fire apparatus. Because of their dedication, TMFR's program for developing drivers is a first-class program and is viewed as an example by other fire service agencies. So, gentlemen, I'll come up here. I'll get you. Pat? Congratulations.
Thanks, Chief.
Nate?
Let's get a picture, Chief.
Chairman, if I may make a quick comment before Chief Eisenhagen takes over.
Floor is yours, Mr. Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. You know, if we've done nothing right at this board, this is the one thing that we have done right. And I have to say, Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, now Truckee Meadows Fire Rescue, has come so far in the last 8 years. I look out across this auditorium and I see families that support their children, their spouses, their husbands, their wives to continue on and continue to earn. And this is really truly what we have strived for here at Truckee Meadows, is to truly build a family within an organization. I look out and I see friends, I see neighbors, I see a commitment to a better and safer community. And that speaks for itself in volumes. From the retired firefighters and individuals that are sitting in the crowd supporting the continued effort, to those that are continue on the front line, those that are continue to help build our programs day in and day out. It's amazing to me to see this kind of dedication and commitment. And I can't thank you enough for all the work that you have done. This board is just pales in comparison to what you really have done within our stations and with our organization day in and day out fighting wildfires and responding to all the EMS within our community. And I don't think there's anybody who can say that TM doesn't provide that level of excellence every time that we're there to show up and provide that kind of service. So with that, I'd ask for just one round of applause for everybody that came today. Thank you.
I'm not even going to try to follow that. Thank you. Commissioners, anyone else? Okay, thank you. That was great, Commissioner. I appreciate those comments. All right, Chief, back to business. That takes us back to item 7. Would you take us in, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item 7 is a wildfire mitigation presentation by Division Chief August Eisenhagen, and with him are Mark Regan, Jesse Murray, and Alex Hoon from NV Energy.
Chief.
Good morning. For the record, August Eisenhagen, Division Chief, Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. After the recent catastrophic fires in Colorado, the board asked us to put together a presentation regarding NV Energy and all of the different programs they have going in regards to wildfire mitigation. So to kick it off, I will give a quick snapshot of my program and where we are currently, and then I'll turn it over to Vice President Murray. He'll talk about system hardening, public safety outages, those areas of NV Energy. And then finally, Alex Hoon, former meteorologist with the National Weather Service, now on the NV Energy side, will give a presentation regarding computer modeling and weather monitoring. So without further ado, maybe.
Got it?
There we go. Okay, quick overview of the timeline of the agreement between Truckee Meadows and NV Energy. Our first agreement was signed in spring of 2020. That's when I started, as well as our first squad of 5 crew members. We added a second squad of 5 that summer and a third that fall. During the winter of 2020, we added a first heavy equipment operator to run the masticator and track chipper. And then this fall, we added a second heavy equipment operator as well as a fire management officer. Right now, we're in the process of hopefully hiring a 4th squad of 5. That's on the agenda today, which means we currently have 20 personnel with a goal of 25 by fire season. Part of the reason for the addition is crew numbers across the state are low in terms of hand crews. And with the additional 5 personnel, we will have the ability to field a full 20-man crew. This is a rundown on some of the equipment that we've purchased through NV Energy. The board has seen this before, so I'll hurry through it. Essentially, between rolling stock and some of the masticators and the other equipment, we're at about $1.5 million in equipment that has been purchased for Truckee Meadows through this contract with NV Energy. We're in the process of buying the 4 trucks at the bottom at the moment to support our heavy equipment operators and our fire management officer. My program overall has a variety of funding sources now. Our NV Energy contract is currently at about $5.4 million. We are awarded 1.2 through State Senate Bill 508. Our SNPLMA grant application that came before the board last month is just under $800,000. We have a contract with the Forest Service, sub-grants through Nevada Division of Forestry to treat Pebble Creek and Rolling Hills, those 2 communities. And then we have an additional roughly $3 million in grant applications out. Why I include this slideshow is obviously NV Energy is the bulk of our funding. And due to that funding, we're able to provide the equipment and personnel to tackle some of these other projects that if we didn't have that as the backbone of the program, we wouldn't be able to do these other programs. Some of our accomplishments over the last 2 years, we've treated almost 3,000 power poles, burnt over 400 piles. We've masticated 300 acres in fuel breaks, hand-treated 230 acres, done a bunch of herbicide application all over the county. After we're doing those fuels clearance projects, we've removed hazard trees on roughly 180 acres and treated loosely 40 private properties in the process. Our green waste numbers were just under 4,000 loads in the last 2 years for roughly 2 million pounds of hazardous fuels that have been removed. NV Energy, again, helps fund all of those projects. We recycled almost 3,000 Christmas trees through Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful. And between personnel and entire unit days committed to fire, we're at 542 in 2 years that we've had personnel assigned to wildland fires. In addition to our program, across the entire county, NV Energy and Nevada Division of Forestry mobilize resources from other entities to help with some of these fuels projects. So above and beyond what just Truckee Meadows has done, in the last 2 years, there's almost 6,000 acres worth of fuels management work that's been done through this agreement. Here's a quick snapshot of some of the communities that our program has had a footprint in over the last 2 years, and that continues to grow. We hope to see it grow with 5 more, and we can affect more positive change in these communities. With that, I'll turn it over to Vice President Murray.
Hold on, Chief. Any questions for the chief before we move on? Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record, sir.
I will, thank you. And thank you, Chief Eisenhagen. For the record, my name is Jesse Murray. I'm the Vice President of Electric Delivery and Natural Disaster Protection for NV Energy. I really appreciate the partnership that NV Energy has had to build or has gotten to build with Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. It's a real important component of a much larger program, and I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes this morning taking you through the different elements of that program. So first of all, this program is known by the title of the Natural Disaster Protection Plan. It originally started back in 2019, was passed as Senate Bill 329 by the Nevada legislature. This was supported by NV Energy and many of our community partners, including Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. And this allowed us to create a program to address really what is an emergent issue in the Western United States, right? As we all know, all of us that live within these communities, the risk of wildfire and other natural disasters is getting worse and worse by the year. That's due large part to the change in our climate, which is especially prevalent here in northern Nevada and in the Sierra. And so this bill is really meant to address that. And really what our goal is to really deal with some of the concerns and issues on our electric system so that we can prevent future wildfires from occurring. And I want to be very clear about this. This first foremost is about public safety of our communities. I'm a resident of Washoe County and have been personally impacted by the fires that we've had in this community. And it's very important that we take the time, opportunity, and resources right now to address this emergent issue. So first off, I want to talk about the highlights of the program just really quickly. Chief Eisenhagen addressed some of the very specific highlights that we have here in Washoe County, but you can see we've been very busy since 2019. We've inspected almost 40,000 wooden poles in our extreme and high wildfire risk areas throughout the state. We've increased our vegetation management frequency, right? Vegetation management is a very critical component of mitigating future wildfires. And you can see that since 2020, we've addressed more than 37,000 unhealthy and hazard trees within our service territory for safety reasons. My colleague here, Alex Hoon, will talk more in detail about this in just a few minutes, but we've installed 30 weather stations and 11 wildfire alert cameras in extreme and high wildfire risk areas. Many of those are located within Washoe County that help us assess the continuing change in climate while also giving us the ability to react more quickly when we see hazardous weather conditions. So a little bit about the overview, because the fuels mitigation program is really one of 7 programs that we are working on within the Natural Disaster Protection Plan. But you can see we're partnering with state and local fire agencies throughout the state. There's actually 15 total right now that we work with in most counties throughout Nevada, including Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue, that are working to remove brush, grass, right, other potential flammable materials that are around our power lines. We've also hired 2 fire mitigation specialists. Chief Regan is here with me today. He is one of those fire mitigation specialists that is providing us with the technical expertise that we as utility professionals need in order to address this emergent issue. We are using new systems and installing hardened equipment throughout our service territory. This includes the use of covered conductor. So most traditional power lines are actually exposed conductor. So if you cover it and you get debris into that line, that will mitigate the potential of igniting fire. We have fuses throughout our system, right? These are similar to fuses that you may have in your home. These fuses also exist to protect our system. Traditional fuses can actually expel molten metal when they activate if there's trouble on the system. We're actually replacing those with non-expulsion fuses throughout the service territory. We're rebuilding many circuits all throughout the state to provide more resiliency. We're eliminating what we call tree attachments. This is particularly a concern at Lake Tahoe, where we've actually attached the service when it was installed 50, 60, 70 years ago to a tree when it goes from the power pole to the home. So we're removing those because that's a potential ignition source. We're using advanced technologies like drone inspections on our equipment and vegetation to identify issues early. In some cases, and I'll talk more about this, we're undergrounding some of our equipment to remove it from the aerial space and mitigate the potential to ignite wildfires. And then finally, we're implementing a public safety outagement program, right, which is a proactive de-energization of our equipment when those hazardous conditions occur. So really quickly about the Washoe County Ndpp efforts. Chief Eisenhagen talked about the fuels mitigation component of this, but we're also looking at rebuilds throughout Washoe County, including the Mount Rose 210, which runs along the southwest Reno area. We're looking to underground 6 miles of lines up at Lake Tahoe, which would include areas in Incline Village, along with 5 miles in Glenbrook. We're implementing some new and modern design standards in these extreme hazardous areas so that we're not further instigating the problem as we continue to expand our system. And we're implementing aggressive patrols and inspections of our equipment to find and address problems before they become such a concern that they can create wildfires. So lastly, I want to talk about the public safety outage management program that we have, right? This is probably the most visible aspect to our citizens as far as an impact to their lives. So if we have hazardous weather conditions, which is usually classified by extreme winds here in Washoe County and also up at Lake Tahoe, public de-energization will be called, and this is where we, as the utility, will implement a power outage in areas that we feel are at risk of having these extreme weather events that could cause fires to occur. These proactive de-energizations will remain while those hazardous weather conditions exist, and then when they complete, we will re-energize those systems. The time frames that we are looking, because we understand that it's important to communicate well in advance, but we try to communicate with the communities as much as 7 days in advance if we start to see those weather conditions as a possibility in our future. But really, as you step through that timeline and we get to the 48-hour mark or the 24-hour mark, we're going to step up our communications protocols through public media and other channels, emergency managers, so that they can address and start to prepare for these power outages. We expect that the outage would occur somewhere around 24 hours after the conclusion of the event. The reason for the delay is because we have to go out and in some cases inspect our equipment to make sure that no damage occurred during that extreme weather event. Once we've cleared those lines, we can then re-energize them. We first started implementing this in 2019 up at Lake Tahoe, and I'll just show a map here. These were the original PSOM zones that we implemented in 2019. Lake Tahoe being our most extreme fire risk area. You can see the incline area as part of Washoe County was one of those PSOM zones. We also have 2 PSOM zones down in southern Nevada. But then last year, we actually expanded this program with approval of the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada to include areas in our elevated risk areas, which includes here in western Nevada, much of the Sierra Front Range, going up from Cold Springs all the way down to the Topaz Lake region, and then also in areas up in Palomino Valley, in the North Valleys, and then some areas within northeast Nevada. And you probably saw a lot of media traffic at that time as we tried to communicate with our customers about these changes, and we continue to try and improve upon this. Just to give an indication of what our goal is here, is we understand how inconvenient and how impactful a power outage can be to our community. And so the reason why you see so many different proactive de-energization zones is because we're trying to target only those areas that are at highest risk. and preserve electricity for those other customers. And so we strive to continue to look for ways to minimize these proactive de-energization zones. And of course, with some of our other programs that we have within natural disaster protection, over time, as we invest more in the system, we would like to either reduce or eliminate altogether the need for these PSOMs. But we do see this as a critical tool. It is, of course, a very inconvenient tool, but it is a very critical tool in order to prevent wildfires from occurring in our community. And finally, I'll just quickly address some of the technology areas that we have as part of Ndpp. We use weather stations. Again, Alex is going to talk about that. We have alert wildfire cameras. If you log onto the internet or you watch any of our local news stations, right, a lot of those cameras are actually through our program where they show valley views or when fires are emergent. So that alert fire camera system is an excellent resource to identify fires early and get resources on them as early as we can. We're also looking at additional technologies like the Altera Fire Scout, which is interactive software that allows us to put artificial intelligence on those cameras to even help us identify those earlier. And then finally using wildfire risk analysis software to help us identify where our most critical areas are and help us prioritize where we will invest in our system to prevent these in the future. And with that, I will turn it over to Alex Hoon, Senior Meteorologist with NV Energy. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, good morning. For the record, my name is Alex Hoon. I'm the Senior Meteorologist for NV Energy. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those technology improvements we're working on with NV Energy, really to make NV Energy one of the most sophisticated power companies in the world as far as fire risk is concerned, and then working with our fire partners as well, our local fire departments such as Truckee Meadows. So as far as the weather stations, we have 30 weather stations currently installed across the state and 11 fire cameras. But in particular, because of the high fire threat of Washoe County, out of those 30, we have 16 of them that are currently in Washoe County, and those are highlighted in the green on this image here, the green pins. And you can see that the blue pins are actually going to be 9 more additional weather stations that are going to be installed by the end of spring 2022. And these weather stations are in conjunction with the, not only are they monitoring the weather conditions that are currently happening, but we are also taking fuel samples around Verdi and in the Galena area. That those fuel samples actually measure the vegetation dryness, and it actually gives us a really good picture of what the fire danger is on the ground before the fire actually happens. So all of this stuff improves our situational awareness, and all of this information is passed along to our local fire departments as well in conjunction during this partnership. The weather station information is public and it's out there on a website, so everyone is able to access it, including Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. The fire detection cameras, we have 11 fire detection cameras across the state. Out of those 11, 6 of those exist in and around the Truckee Meadows in Washoe County. And those fire cameras have, as you can see here, this is our hillside camera that is just east of Sparks. And it just gives a really good example of the view that these cameras gives us. Miles and miles of perfect view to be able to detect new fire starts, whether it is a human-caused start, a lightning fire, or potentially a power line fire. So these fire detection cameras are actually, we're working with the University of Nevada in Reno, and this is what's called the Alert Wildfire Camera Network. And these Alert Wildfire cameras are a public site, and actually you guys can Google it and go to Alert Wildfire and be able to look at the cameras yourselves. But we actually have control over the cameras. The cameras that belong to NV Energy actually rotate in 360 degrees and every couple of minutes. So it gives actually a 360 degree view of what's happening on the ground. In conjunction with these fire detection cameras, there's this Altera Fire Scout artificial intelligence. This is an AI, And so this AI is constantly monitoring the images that come from our fire cameras. And when it detects a difference from one image to another, it could be a smoke plume such as this in this slide here, or it could be at night it could be an infrared an image, so it's actually sensing the heat coming from it. So there is a 24/7 potential for detecting new wildfires on this Altera Fire Scout. And so far it's proven to be a really valuable tool. It actually sends out text messages to us and to all of our partner fire departments, including Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. All of the chief officers for Truckee Meadows are a part of this as well, so they receive any text messages whenever there's a new fire start. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about this wildfire risk analysis software that we're going to be moving forward with, hopefully for this fire season. We're planning on it. And it is a picture you can see on this image here. There is all of the power grids across the region. It takes all of the power grids, and then it takes the weather for the next 5 days, temperatures, humidity, winds. It takes the vegetation dryness, and then it actually calculates based off of 20,000. Each day, it actually runs 20,000 model runs of potential wildfire starts. So over this map, you can see that some areas are yellow, others are orange, others are red, and it gives you the areas of highest fire potential for the day based off of the weather. Now, this is going to help us to do to make decisions for the public safety outage management if the conditions are extreme enough that we need to shut down the power. And this will actually help us to minimize the amount of area that is actually shut down with the power, because we definitely want to keep the power on as long as we can, unless we have those extreme conditions. Now, if the conditions are marginal, this software will actually help us to pinpoint the areas of highest concern. Even though the conditions are marginal, we'll leave the power on, and then we can do other routes of fire mitigation, such as staging fire resources across the region in those particular areas where we know that the winds are going to be the strongest and the highest fire danger is going to be. All of this information, now this information is not public. This information is being shared with our local fire departments, though. And so Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue will have this information ahead of any weather event so that they can prepare. But this will not be made public just because of the nature of the software. So the other thing that this is actually going to help us with is there is a 30-year climate reanalysis that goes with this software as well. So all of the weather events for the past 30 years are going to be input over all of the power grid across the state, including Washoe County. And then it actually calculates what is the average fire danger for all of the power grid. And that actually gives us a tool to be able to prioritize certain areas over others. So we'll be able to actually look at the power grid and say, these areas near Collin Ranch need to be addressed first as the highest priority, because they have the highest priority of destroying the most houses, impacting the most amount of people. This software is actually some of the most sophisticated software that is out there, and it will bring us really into the future. It's going to lead NV Energy and our partner fire agencies into basically fighting fire into the modern age. So good stuff. One last thing is if there is a new fire ignition. If there's a new fire ignition, we can actually run on-demand fire behavior runs to be able to see whether it's a fire started from, hopefully not from our power lines, but if it's a power line fire, if it's a lightning fire, if it's a fire from a campground or a construction accident, we're able to run a fire behavior run and to see where that fire is going to be in 30 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, 6 hours, and that'll actually help the firefighters be able to make better decisions on the ground, actually fighting the fires each day. So that's all I have, and I believe we can take some questions if you guys
Okay.
have any.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's great. And Chief, and I think that goes back into the plan that we talked about, where to deploy our resources and how best to deploy them. This is wonderful. Before I turn it over to Vice Chair Hill, I just want to thank you for your participation in our community. 5.4 million is no small number, and while it could be seen as an effort of self-preservation, I see it as a public-private partnership to make sure that we're protecting our community together, because you're an integral part of our community. When I go home, I expect to flip the light switch on and it comes on, and so I can't live without you. So I'm thrilled that that NV Energy is willing to step up. So with that, Commissioner Hill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this question would be for Mr. Regan. When is the plan to ground those power lines in Incline Village?
Underground them.
Yes.
For the record, Mark Regan, Fire Chief, NV Energy. The undergrounding for some of the areas in Incline, we're currently going through the review process and the permitting of that. I believe we're going to be looking at 2 years. Yeah. We're going to be starting to do some of the work this summer on
Okay.
prepping the undergrounding. And then also we're looking at some of the system hardening we're going to be starting to do during the May 15th approval to do TRPA work. So we're
Oh,
going to do some
great.
of the system hardening.
Okay. And are we using, or are y'all using the texting programs to let citizens know about these outages?
Yes, the public safety outage, our PSOM events we do. Yes, we use our social media sites.
Okay.
We also send out messages through the news media, and also on our website. We also use our internal system that we have, all of the community, all the customers. We push out the information to make sure you keep your account updated with us with your latest information on your cell phones and emails. And we also send out our messages through text messages through our customer service center and also emails. And then also has a link on those messages that go out where it will link us right back to our website, which you can also put your address in and see if you are affected.
Thank you. I appreciate those answers, and I'll let my constituents know that we'll be looking at grounding here soon. That's going to be a game changer for that part of Washoe County and Incline Village. Thank you.
Yes, multiple different, system hardening, just not just the undergrounding, the vegetation management, the system hardening of covered conductor. We're combining all that to make it safer for the community.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lucy, I have you signed in next.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it. Mr. Hoon or Mr. Reagan, if you want to answer this. You talked about, can you explain the Mount Rose 210 system and to that for me? I would like to just a little bit more detail on the Mount Rose 210.
Yeah, Commissioner Lucy, Jesse Murray for the record. So the Mount Rose 210 circuit originates at our Mount Rose substation, which is located just at the end of Pine Haven Drive in southwest Reno, outside of Cullen Ranch. That circuit then proceeds southeast along the Sierra foothills there, over towards the Huffacre Ranch area, the Holcomb Ranch area,
Right.
and then serves several thousand customers in that southwest Reno, Holcomb Ranch, Huffacre region.
Okay. Now, and then talk to me about the lines actually along the Mount Rose corridor. Do you have a lot of pole lines around the Mount Rose corridor? And the reason I bring this up is that a lot of we're very fortunate to live where we do. However, because of our geographic location along the eastern part of the Sierras, we get a lot of the cold air that comes up from off of the ocean and through the Central Valley, and we get easterly wind or westerly winds that come all across the desert, creating a thermal effect. And we get very, very high winds along all of our foothills on the eastern. That includes the range on the east side of Peavine, all along the eastern part of the Sierras, all the way down to Carson City, where we can see speeds where most people freak out about speeds of 50 miles an hour. We frequently see speeds up to 80 to 90 miles an hour along those foothills. The Washoe Zephyrs that makes paragliding great, but firefighting miserable. So the things we want to talk about is that quite often those above ground lines arc and cause transformers to blow and different things of that nature, which also are a fire hazard. Are there plans in place to address or prioritize those areas where those lines are above ground? And because we are doing those undergrounding in Incline Village, where we do see a lot of that timber, however, we do still see quite a bit of vegetation along the eastern Sierras where those lines are, like the Mount Rose 210 that you speak of from the Collin Ranch area, where we've seen fires before, but the Timberline area, the Collin Ranch area, out into Washoe Valley, where we've had a number of fires, the Little Valley Fire, there are above ground fires. So what are we doing with those specifically, those lines?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And the answer is yes, we are absolutely prioritizing those areas. We have evaluated our entire service territory by a description of risk, right? So obviously the highest risk is up at the lake where it's a forested area. And really what we're concerned with there, right, is vegetation blowing into the line and causing a fire. As you move over the ridgetop and into the western Nevada valleys, right, you get a transition from forest to high desert, as you described, along those foothills. The nature of the threat also changes, right? Now we're not necessarily so worried about debris blowing into the lines, but maybe the lines making contact with each other. The covered conductor system that I had described earlier in my presentation and what we're going to propose to the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada this spring to put covered conductor in that area would mitigate a lot of that risk. The covered conductor, even if the lines touch, they won't generate an arc because now there's an insulator around those lines. Okay. And so that is a system that we would deploy in areas where we think that is the primary hazard. In other areas where there's a more thickly forested area, we may consider undergrounding. But it's important to note that undergrounding can also create a fair amount of environmental disturbance, and particularly up at Lake Tahoe with such an environmentally sensitive area combined with very difficult geology of being a granite basin. Undergrounding may not be the most effective solution in those areas. So the entire team, and you can see I have a whole team here behind me today, right. Their primary goal is to evaluate and prioritize and select the best option, taking both mitigation and cost into consideration, because it's ultimately our customers that will have to pay for these upgrades and improvements to ultimately develop the solution that will mitigate fire to the best of our ability.
Understood, and I think you've hit it right on the head. I mean, the environmental impact in regards to undergrounding some of these lines, especially in some of those very critical areas such as the Lake Tahoe Basin and the foothills, is important, but also very difficult due to the type of area you're talking about. The only reason I mentioned those foothill areas along the P-Vine in Commissioner Herman's district and my district. Along those foothills, a lot of that vegetation, once that fire starts, due to those winds, due to those speeds of winds, you see embers travel quite a long ways if you have a high wind event. So once they're in that base timber, even if you're not truly in that vegetation, that high vegetation, the embers, if it starts in those foothills, can travel miles downwind into tall brush, which causes a lot of issues. So the only reasons I bring that up is that it is of great concern to a number of constituents in District 2, 1, and 5, because it makes those wind events, those Washoe Zephyr events that we see quite frequently through fall and springtime, can cause that type of a fire event. And not disputing that there is lake wind events and different things up at Lake Tahoe and I've seen 80, 100-foot trees sway 20 feet back and forth, but they do not see the type of wind events we do on the eastern side because they're in that bowl. It kind of passes them and really does impact those foothill areas down here in the foothill in the Truckee Meadows. So it's one of those things I would really ask that we continue to investigate and provide us some direction with that, because the covered conductors are a phenomenal addition, but undergrounding in up Mount Rose Corridor may be a lot easier environmentally than undergrounding in the Lake Tahoe Basin. Just my suggestion. I'm not a firefighter, nor am I an engineer, but like to, just provide my perspective from what I've seen from the years past.
And I really appreciate those comments. And certainly we are evaluating, and I assume when you talk about the Mount Rose Corridor, you're talking about the Mount Rose Highway, Galena, Montreux area. So that is another elevated risk area that we are very focused on trying to mitigate the fires. And I would say that, that's why we have Alex on staff now. All of us that live in Western Nevada know that, the climate can change just driving down the street. And I happen to live right at the top of Collin Ranch and understanding, I live in one of the most windiest areas. So I've, fixed my fence half a dozen times in, the 8 years I've lived up there.
Right.
So I certainly understand that. And part of our PSOM plan is, at some point, right, the winds just get so extreme that we have to take extreme action, do the PSOMs. Alex is here to help us understand those microclimates, because I understand where I live, but you're right, we need to understand the climates on the Mount Rose Highway. We need to understand the climates in Verdi. We need to understand the climates at Peavine, all the way up to Cold Springs also.
Right. And then, sir, one last question, Chairman, if I may.
Please.
As you prioritize those areas, will the constituents and the general public be able to look at maps where those areas are prioritized and kind of future plans for NV Energy and what your outreach will look like?
The short answer is yes. So all of these plans have to go through a rigorous review process at the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada. Right. We file annual reviews with them. We actually are working under a triennial plan that operates from 2020 to 2023, which was an initial $250 million investment in natural disaster protection throughout the state. We do intend to file another amendment to that plan this year that will address specifically some of these projects that we are talking about along the Western Nevada foothills. We will be submitting a new triennial plan next year in 2023 to cover the next 3 years. The public is welcome to participate in all of those, and we disclose through that planning process, where our prioritizations are, the projects that we hope to undertake, and get feedback from all stakeholders in the community so that we're ultimately making the best decision. It's not NV Energy making that prioritization in a vacuum. It's actually taking input from Chief Moore and our other fire agency partners, other emergency management agencies that we work with throughout the state to come up with a community-wide prioritization so that we know that we're attacking the highest priorities first for all stakeholders.
That's wonderful. And where can they go? Where's the easiest way for them to access that information? Is that through NV Energy's website? Or?
So we actually have a website. Off the top of my head, I believe it's nvenergy.com /NDPP. Our plan is there. Our PSOM maps are there. And any member of the public can go and see what we're doing, how we're doing it. And there's actually a way for them to communicate back with us if they have any questions, comments, or concerns.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lucy. Those are great questions. Commissioner Jung, I have you signed in next.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm so glad to hear that, not only that you live here, because I love to hear that, because I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between Southern Nevada and Northern Nevada, and very different terrain and weather, et cetera. I'm also delighted that you've stole from us Chief Regan and have a meteorologist on. I think it's very smart what you've done, I'm going to tell you, and I applaud NV Energy for those great strides, and I want to just let this commission know that, the western side of the Sierras gets some pretty hellacious winds too. And I have in-laws that live in like Wildwood, Penn Valley, Grass Valley. It's a little bit of a fancy place, but it's a way of life for them now to have their energy come off and on. So anything you can do to help customers mitigate that too. I believe PG&E has some programs where they help people buy generators, or they help them buy freezers that are more energy efficient, because they do have times when everything is turned off for a couple days sometimes to preserve that community, because they're completely in the foothills. It's a selling point, all the trees. Until it gets to the season of fire season, which now is year-round, to be honest. So I just applaud you and commend you, and I thank you so much for being partners with us. This is something this board, we bite our nails when this is going on, and we're texting each other a little worried about how things are going. So I'm just so glad that we got locals up here and great professionals to help us figure this out, because it's going to take all of us to do it, as well as setting that expectation for your customers, our constituents, of why this has to be done. So any programs like that would be great if you can roll them out. I don't know where you're at in this, and clearly PG&E has a lot of problems, and that's why they have to do all this mitigation, because of their liability, which I'm sure that's why NV Energy is also partnering with all of us. But I agree with the chairman. It's going to take all of us together to learn to live in the West with wildfire, and that might mean your electricity is going to be turned off to keep everybody safe. So I really commend you, and I thank you so much for being here. I know you don't have to be here, and again, I thank you for stealing Chief Regan. You got a good crew with you and your meteorologist. I can geek out with a meteorologist all day. So I just think I love the strides that NV Energy has taken, and taken it very seriously. So I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Jung. And I would just quickly elaborate on some of the customer programs that you inquired about. I would start by saying that PG&E's risk is different than NV Energy's risk. Certainly on the western side of the Sierras, they're concerned with downsloping winds that come out of the east, primarily in those areas, whereas we are more concerned with that seasonal changing cold front, right? For all of us that we'll see that October, November, it's when the vegetation was driest. As part of our PSOM program, we implement what we call customer resource centers. Those customer resource centers are there to provide some basic necessities to customers that may be impacted throughout the duration of the event. It's also our goal to keep those events as short as possible. I've frankly heard the stories of the durations of the outages that they deal with on the California side of the hill, and the team behind me works tirelessly to make sure that we are not exposing our customers to that unnecessarily. Prior to Alex, I was also serving as the meteorologist of the company, which was not a good thing, because I'm not a meteorologist. but that being said, that is a critical component to better understanding this issue. I would finally say with the customer programs, because we do have some sensitive populations within our community that are completely dependent upon medically life-sustaining equipment. We have what we call our Green Cross program, and we continually communicate with our customers that if they feel they qualify for a Green Cross program, which means they need some 24-hour life-sustaining equipment during these outages, NV Energy will either deploy a generator on their home to keep them powered, or we will provide them with other accommodations, other powered accommodations, a hotel, so that they don't have to worry throughout the duration of the outage. So we do have those programs in place.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because that is exactly the question that I had. Does NV Energy have a program for citizens who can't easily be without power for 24 hours? As an example, someone with a medical issue. They just can't.
Yes.
So that's, I'm thrilled. Thank you for asking that question, Commissioner, and thank you for answering that. Commissioner Hill, I have you signed in next, or Vice Chair Hill. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more thing. Do you ever go to citizen groups to express this program and let people know about it by any chance?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, we do.
Okay,
and
great.
we're presenting to the commission today. But every spring, and we try and partner with, Wildfire Month, right, in May. I think it's in May. Yeah, May. So when we talk about wildfire awareness, since we've started this program, have tried to piggyback with those efforts that UNR and other fire agencies drive through that, Safe Wildfire Month to communicate with our constituents. We also, every spring, gather some of the critical stakeholders in our community, emergency managers, fire agencies, and we talk about, what we're doing differently this year, or solicit feedback on some of the different items. But the short answer is yes, and I would further commit that, if you have a citizen group that would like us to come talk with them, I would make myself personally available to go talk with them.
Thank you so much. I'll run out and give you my card so you can come and speak to the Incline Village Crystal Bay Community Advisory Board. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioners, anyone else? Well, again, we're thankful for the public-private partnership. It is good for the community, it's good for NV Energy, and we're appreciative. I mean, saving the community is paramount, and so we're again very thankful that NV Energy is willing to participate. Again, with the experts, not putting your own crews out there, but really giving the money and supporting our team, who are very adept, and of course, our partner agencies in the region who are very adept at this kind of activity and understanding how to mitigate fire. And try to make the community as safe as possible. So again, we're thankful. If there's anything that this board can do, I know that everyone here is supportive, and please let us know.
Okay, thank you, Chair Hartung. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners, and for the great questions. All right, Chief, that takes us now to item number 10, if I've calculated correctly, the Fire Chief's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to take these items out of sequence too, starting with number 1, then number 4.
Do it any way that you'd like, Chief.
Thank you.
Chair, I do have a handout to pass out to the board for 10-1 as well.
Okay, would you distribute that, please, Madam Clerk?
So as Chief Kukulis and Aaron Abbott from REMSA get ready for their presentation, I'll just mention that Commissioner Lucy had asked for an update on dispatch.
Okay.
And that's the purpose of this presentation.
Yep, again, take it in any order that you'd like, Chief. Thank you.
Settled in here. Thank you. All right, good morning. For the
Welcome,
record,
Chief.
Alex Kukulis, Deputy Fire Chief, and helping me present this topic this morning is Aaron Abbott from REMSA. I know we've had a lot of good conversation on other topics, so I'll try and be concise and leave any time for questions. But the board had asked for a quick update on our dispatch transition. So as we've already informed the board, we did successfully make that transition on December 15th of 2021, so just about 75 days ago, a little over 10 weeks. I think in a nutshell, things went as well as we had hoped. All the critical elements came into play. You know, with any large undertaking like this, there's, you know, refinements that follow. And so, but I think that, you know, the larger scale incidents, structure fires, et cetera, all the critical elements were there from the get-go. And as we've had more and more of those incidents over the last 10 weeks, I've listened to them myself, and I think the rest of our staff can agree that we've seen really good progress to the point that we really have a strong foundation underneath us at this point. You know, we mentioned it during this transition process. Our EMS element of what we do is about 90% of our total call volume. You know, maybe about 80% that's strictly EMS, but there's those vehicle accidents and these other calls that have an EMS component too. So there really is a strong alignment between our organization and REMSA's, which was one of the big reasons that we made this transition. I'll kind of quickly fly through these the bullet points, and I'll have Aaron elaborate on a couple. But as of now, in these 2.5 months, we've successfully dispatched approximately 2,500 incidents, including numerous structure fires, without any critical failures along the way. So I'm happy about that. We did complete the project under budget, which is a proud thing for us to be able to say. You know, the initial contract renewal we looked at with Washoe Dispatch was almost $1.4 million. So this came in at less than half that. We had some contingencies in there that we didn't have to use. So all in all, a success that way as well. There's been some misinformation out there about our radio system, so I just want to kind of clarify that for anyone listening. But you know, we are on the exact same 800 megahertz radio channels that we have been on for many, many years. That didn't change, so REMSA is just broadcasting over our existing channels, as well as the functionality of our VHF and UHF systems that we use on other incident types. REMSA did add additional 911 pathways. That was a request of some of the PSAPs because of the additional call volume flowing into their center. So I don't have the precise numbers, but there is some additional bandwidth there as well. The Cad Data Integration. So REMSA has a different CAD than what we came off of with Tiburon and the other PSAPs. That had to connect to our record management system, some of the other software components that we use that are tied to CAD. So all those things were there in place on December 15th, and then we've continued to fine tune those and are kind of wrapping up. I think Captain Ackerson, who's done a yeoman's job trying to lift this thing off the ground, has a punch list of, I think, 50, 70, I can't remember the number of issues that we continue to work through, and we're getting that down to a small number of lower priority tasks right now. AVL functionality was another big piece of why we did this, and on the screen above me, this is my MDT out of my rig, but this is the live feed of what our CAD looks like. You can see the volume of resources there. Those are just the Truckee Meadows resources. That's a true AVL picture right there, so that's where those units are right now. You can see the color changes as they get assigned a call, as well as some of the REMSA ambulances all integrated onto that singular map. So they're using that to dispatch the closest resources. And it's been a shift in some of our run strings where rather than a static response, it's really dynamic in grabbing those closest resources between the two agencies too. We just recently, last couple of weeks, felt confident enough in the baseline that we'd performed that we were able to kind of go to the next phase, I've called it, where we are able to look at, where a REMSA ambulance is and say, for example, if it's a low priority incident, what we call priority 3 incident or even lower, one ambulance is more than enough to handle that incident. So why send the fire truck to that, especially if it's, say, less than a 5-minute delta between our response time. So we've just initiated that. That's going to keep our resources available for those higher priority incidents. And that was a big point of why we did this whole endeavor. Our ambulances, the 3 we run out of Washoe Valley, Spanish Springs, and Sun Valley, are part of the system now. So REMSA will occasionally pull those in, mutual aid into their system, and vice versa. We, of course, still use them on the majority of our incidents. So that's been sped up significantly by integrating the 2 CADs and 2 programs. The other fire agencies in the Valley, Reno and Sparks predominantly, and us too, before this change, had to switch over from our dispatch on 800 megahertz over to REMSA's dispatch center to get priority information on EMS incidents as well as those additional details. We no longer have to do that. We benefit from that shared information coming right out of the same dispatch center, whereas Reno and Sparks are still jumping between those 2 channels. So we see that as a benefit that's working well as well. We've had some conversations with the PSAPs, and they've raised a couple concerns. I think one of the most significant ones that came out of that was a concern, especially as we head into Wildland fire season, that when there's a large influx of 911 calls because of a very visible event, that it may overwhelm the system. So, and I'm going to have Aaron elaborate on this in a moment, but that was asked that we find some rollover capabilities so that if REMSA's dispatchers and call takers can't pick up those phone lines because of that volume, that those automatically roll to another center where that information can get handled and gathered. So I'm happy to report there's some progress on that, and we're going to continue to refine that going forward. In those same conversations, we've identified, and there was issues that probably had nothing to do with Truckee Meadows jumping over to REMSA dispatch, but we just now see some other issues where there's opportunities to kind of regionalize some of our approaches, terminology, et cetera, between the different PSAPs in the county. And then lastly, we are monitoring and we are actively involved in the CAD RFP that the region is undertaking. Reno's actually sponsored the RFP, but Washoe County is kind of running point on it. But in the next year or 2 at best, there hopefully will be a new CAD for the region, and it is our intention, we've expressed this before, that we and REMSA will hopefully move to that so that we can fully integrate onto the same platform, because that is one of the challenges right now is we're still on disparate systems. So that's something we're definitely a part of going forward. So for me, I just want to, again, thank Captain Ackerson for everything that's happened with this, as well as Chief Kettering's been a big part of this. And I'll turn it over to Aaron to kind of elaborate on some of those things.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chief. For the record, Aaron Abbott, Executive Director of Operations for REMSA. Just want to make a couple comments. We think this is going very, very well. It's always causes some anxiety when you do a new thing. But I think all the preparation that was done by the staff at Truckee Meadows, as well as our dispatch folks, really paid off in the end. So smooth transition. I couldn't be happier with it. As Alex mentioned, one item that was brought up was the issue of potentially being overwhelmed during a large wildland incident. If you can see a large fire on Peavine, the entire community is calling 911 for that fire. Even at times when there's apparatus already on scene and visible, people will still call. So that kind of speaks to some of your earlier presentations about a lot of the anxieties and the wildfire danger that we have here. So we are working with a couple of different PSAPs out of the region that can provide the same level of service that REMSA's dispatch center can. So we're in direct discussions right now with a center that is out of the region, but is also an accredited center of excellence. And so an accredited center was important to us. There's only one other accredited center in northern Nevada. They're outside of Washoe County. They're too small though to handle our volume if for some reason calls started rolling over to them. So we're looking outside the region, and we have some good discussions, and we actually feel like we're on track. Before our wildfire season really kicks off, we should have a mutual aid agreement or a MOU agreement with another center that will provide in-kind services if they get overwhelmed. They're actually in a very, very high wildfire danger area. with a very high history of devastating fires. And their interest is the same as ours, that, hey, if they get overwhelmed, we want calls rolling to us and our calls rolling to them. The accredited piece is very important to us. We need a center that is equally capable of a high-quality determination of what that incident is. And so that accreditation piece really means that we're doing the same thing the same way. And so that if they take a call for a citizen that's experiencing an emergency, be it a medical or fire emergency, they're going to come up with the same determination that we are of what that incident is, so that we can dispatch the right resources out of our center to accommodate that. So we're continuing to work toward that, and again, couldn't be more pleased with how it's going so far. So I'm here for any questions you might have.
Commissioners, Commissioner Lucy, I think you're trying to sign in on me here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it. And, you know, I did ask for this to come back and provide an update. And I can't tell you, you know, there was obviously a little bit of reservation, obviously, at first. But I think you have proven, both of you have proven, this has truly been efficient and probably the best choice we've made in quite some time, and really consolidating services and showing that we can work together as a region, unified and move together. And this right here speaks to an advancement that we haven't seen in our region in 15, 20 ever years. I mean, this is showing that we can functionally work together as a region. We just need to quit getting in our own way and providing ourselves the ability to truly provide the services to the community. Knowing where our services are, getting rid of the lines, just knowing that we're all one community is really what I'd like to see. You know, and not that this is an action item or you know, for discussion, but you know, this is something I'd like to see brought back to the county commission, and not only the county commission but the city councils, and have this to start really having this discussion, because this is long overdue. And this is really what the citizens need to see, is every resource they have the availability for us to truly dispatch in a functional and very rapid manner, because it's not about the people that sit at the dioceses or the people that sit in the offices. It's about the frontline individuals that are on the boxes and on the engines. It's about the frontline, it's about the citizens that need that response now, not 10 minutes ago, because it's where they live or jurisdictionally how it functionally lays out. It's about where that closest piece of apparatus is to change the life or the course of somebody else's life. And that's really what the matter is. And this truly shows that we can do that, and do that effectively and efficiently. And it doesn't matter who's behind the phone, and it doesn't matter who's on the engine. It really shows we can do it. And so if this isn't proof in the pudding, I don't know what is. And I'm just thrilled, because when you talk about 2,500 incidents since transition, and then the next thing you talk about is that we're under budget, you know, less than $700,000 under what our other, you know, that's those two pieces of data to me speak volumes. We're not only being efficient with money, but we're responding timely. And that makes me a very, very happy commissioner, because I know we're spending dollars wisely, and people are getting the resources that need. And that money can be better spent on more apparatus, more services, better things for the community. Issues such as fire mitigation, you name it. When we're doing things the right way, we're spending money the right way. And that makes me tremendously happy. Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, thank you so much, Commissioner. And you know, before I let my other commissioners speak, I will just say this again, and I think everybody knows this. I don't care who shows up. I don't care. I just want somebody to show up. In an emergency, I want somebody to show up. And if there's a unit that's close by and they can show up quicker, that's all I care about. And I would wager to you that throughout this community, that you would have, there would be nobody who would argue with that. In an emergency, in a life emergency. So thank you, Commissioner Lucy, for pushing on this. I know you've really sort of led this charge. Vice Chair Hill, I have you signed in next.
Thank you. And I'm so glad Commissioner Lucy asked for this to come back, because these are really exciting, just very early statistics that you're bringing to us. And I was a doubter on this board. I was concerned about this partnership, and I have to say I'm really excited about how far you've come, and I really am also excited that you're not dispensing our staff unnecessarily. And with this partnership, you're ensuring that there aren't more vehicles on the road, creating more hazards. I think that this is a really smart way to go, and I agree with Commissioner Lucy. We've got to bring this back to the board and really tell this story. I think this is a great story, and I want to commend this board for your leadership on this and pushing me to get there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Jung, I have you signed in next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo what my colleagues have said up here on the board. I'm really proud of you, both of you, and the fire chief. This was a heavy lift, and as most things that are innovative or in any way imply any sort of change to people, it's easy for people on the outside to throw criticism towards us. And I think we as a community have to get out of that. I think we should be rooting everybody on and hoping that everybody succeeds in their endeavors, because that only makes us all better at the end of the day. But I am sure proud of this lift and where it has come. And, you know, as the vice chairwoman says, there was a lot of trust that had to be placed there. And I'm glad that we always need a doubting Thomas up here, because if everybody agrees, somebody's not thinking. That's what I always think. It's just groupthink now. But I really want to commend both of you and the fire chief, who, you know, we hired this fire chief really expecting quite a bit of creativity, because that's the only way that's all we had a lot of was creativity at the beginning. And you really have demonstrated that, Mr. Chief Moore. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and with your team and your great staff. And I tell you guys this all the time, and it probably doesn't make some people happy, but you need to take this on the road when you retire, because this is facing every single community in these United States in terms of the Medicare and the Medicaid, and how it is not sustainable to run operating services. I would take when you retire, you got a letter of reference for me, because I would take this on the road. You created something that's going to work and sustain, that the population, as it should, not have to worry about. Right? That's what we're here for. That's why the vice chairwoman had anxiety over this. That's what she's paid for, to worry about this, so the rest of our constituents can have first world medical services, even in a terrible downturn, and we can't hire people, and I could go on. But I think you found something very important and creative that should be demonstrated across this nation if we care about other communities. I happen to care about all the communities here. I care about them all across the world, actually, but I commend you for that. And I hope that your bosses do as well. Well, you know, I'm up here, I think you're getting it good, but I hope everybody is hearing that, because this was a heavy lift and intimidating. I mean, I think that's anytime we take a step like that, it can be a little intimidating, but I'm always rooting for you. So keep going and let us know what we can do to help, because I'm really proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Harmon, I have you signed in next. And then after Commissioner, well, it'll be iced. Okay. I'm having a login error, staff. So, and I don't even know what the password is, because I don't log into Granicus. But Ryan, it's okay. Let Commissioner Harmon have her questions, and then I know Commissioner Lucy has some questions, and then after that we'll just take a break once this item is done, so that staff can get me resolved. Commissioner Harmon.
I just want to thank all you experts, because you knew all along this would work. Thank you. God bless you.
Okay. Commissioner Lucy, I've got you signed in.
Thank you, Chairman. One last thing. You know, one other thing I want to say is that innovation is very difficult, as Commissioner Jung pointed out. It's always a little risky, and you never know. I always try to operate like I'm running my business. If it doesn't work, I can pivot. It's not that easy in government to just pivot. But I want to commend the two of you and Chief and Mr. Dean Dow, who's not here with us today, for bringing forward this type of innovation. This type of innovation discussion is what this board has always done with TM, and this is why we are the organization we are today, because when Chief Moore did take over, We weren't innovative. We were very rudimentary in how we proceeded with things. But you can see through this type of innovation and accepting this type of innovation, through our green waste program, what we've done and different things like this, we get wonderful results and tremendous support from the community. So what are the next steps? Mr. Abbott or Chief, can you talk to me about what next steps are in regards to, we talked about the PSAPs, staffing wise, where are we at with things?
Yeah, again, Aaron Abbott, Executive Director of Operations. I think some of the initial next steps is to really continue to leverage what we see, what you can see in front of you is all the resources now that we have visibility into, and really refining our responses to continue to save where there's continued waste, where there may be unnecessary responses. We would like to see, and personally and nationally, I would really love to see us continue down the path of reducing unnecessary lights and sirens responses to certain things. They're very dangerous, and we're getting very, very good at deciding and determining out of a dispatch center what is really a life-threatening emergency and what is not worth risking someone's life for another 90 seconds off your response. And keeping those available resources available for those people who really, really do have a time-sensitive medical or fire-related emergency. At REMS's dispatch center, which now includes Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue, we are continuing to move forward with video from the scene, from the callers, live streaming into our dispatch center. So that's one of our next steps that's already on the list. We've already got the infrastructure and the technology in place, and we're working toward actual policies around that so that the firefighters, the battalion chiefs can actually see what the hazard is while they're responding to it and make decisions about, do I really need to push this and get all this equipment here, or can we back off a little bit? And so some of those things I think are on the immediate next steps. We're also starting to prepare for wildfire season. So we know that we intentionally implemented in the middle of December, and that's going to give us time to get our staff as much reps as possible up underneath them, so that we're as prepared as possible, so that when we do have those larger incidents that are ongoing for a longer period of time, that we're prepared for that. So all those things are wheels in motion right now.
Wonderful, Mr. Abbott. Thank you. Mr. Kukulis, do you have anything you need to?
Yeah, well, I just agree. I mean, to build on a couple of things, yes, the Wildland fire is sort of the next phase for us. We intend on incorporating the dispatchers into all of our training the crews do over the next several months leading into that. So those are the kind of short-term steps of progression and refinement. On a broader scale, I think that we still have work to do as a region. I mean, our two agencies are functioning pretty seamlessly right now. We do have some good boundary drop agreements with Sparks, but there's some technological restrictions to that, being on disparate CADs. We've tried to work on some CAD to CAD solutions while we await the future regional CAD. We've run into some obstacles with that. And from just strictly a policy perspective amongst the various agencies, we can do better getting all of the resources on one page.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Lucy. And I again, thanks for the hard work. Commissioner Jung is not here, but yeah, I mean, it was I don't want to call it a tough sell, but not all of us just said, yeah, this is a great idea. I mean, I wanted empirical data as to why we should do this and do it this particular way. And I think any one of us and anyone out there would agree, dispatch is the first piece in this entire puzzle. Dispatch. When I make a call, I want to get the right resources deployed, and so that's the hard part. When you do it for a long time a certain way, it's very, very difficult. People are creatures of habit. And it becomes difficult to change. And technology has really improved our ability to serve the community. And so I'm thankful. I think the best is still yet to come. That's my own opinion. I'll keep that as my own opinion. But I want to thank you for the hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, anyone else? Okay. All right. Chief, my pad is working, so I don't need to take a break. Keep going with your fire chief's report.
I'd like to introduce Dr. Steve Nicholas, who is our mental health supporter. And I mentioned when Chris Black was up at the podium, he was instrumental in bringing Echelon Front leadership training to us. Those guys were Navy SEALs. They were in the middle of Fallujah. They saw the worst that can happen to people. And they testified that this is real stuff that we deal with. I still have dreams of calls that I've been on years past. And this is stuff that sticks to us, unfortunately, like glue. And I'm so thankful that we have Steve here to help our entire staff in resolving some of the more difficult things that we have to see on a daily basis. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Dr. Nicholas, before you get started, I want to acknowledge the program. Historically, when you look back, my dad was a World War II vet. My uncle was a World War II vet. And they did not acknowledge these kinds of issues. They were just told to go home and get a job and, buck up. And
you're paid from the neck down.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And I know, having lived with a parent that had issues and an uncle that had issues that every once in a while you would see those things creep out in their personalities. And so I'm thankful that we recognize this and, the hard work that you guys put in. So Dr. Nicholas, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. For the record, Steve Nicholas. In June of 2019, that's when this project kind of got off the ground. Unfortunately, most things in first response in military are learned from looking in hindsight. And in 2019, TM lost one of their own. And so it was shortly after, probably right at the end of June of 19, Chief Moore, Chief Kukulis, and I sat down, had lunch, and the conversation surrounded what's a better idea? What's a better way? Unfortunately, the better way involves more pain and looking backwards. And so my thoughts, and now that we've had them in action for 2.5 years, so I wanted to come here, essentially give an update and a walkthrough from 2019 to now, is that we needed a responder for the first responders. And if that was going to be me, my idea for this would be, yes, I will be there to be that first responder to our brothers and sisters in TM. But the idea is that generally military, paramilitary, first response networks don't trust outsiders, and nor should they, quite frankly. So my opportunity would be there in those critical events, but to start creating and earning relationships so that it would be much more just smooth. So for the last 2.5 years, we have stats from 2020 that are up on the board right there. Just, you don't need to be able to read the fine print, but the big pie wedges essentially show what I was doing in 2020, and that's earning relationships. And so creating relationships by having one-on-one interactions, having station rotations, so it's just an immersion of a clinician. And that means it's not clinical, it's relational. So creating a relational model that is not a clinical model, honestly, that is in my firm opinion, that is the model. To create relationships so that when those events eventually do happen, the relationship and the comfort level is there with the clinician. So those are the stats from 2020, and those ended up numbering 423 hours. And I think it was 96.5% of those were direct hours. They were not admin hours. They're not being on the telephone. They're being in relationships with the men and women of Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue. If we go to 2021, those pie wedges look pretty similar, except our interactions were even higher. And so the raw data of those is less than 2% of that was admin. So over 98% of the time that I'm going to interact with TM is going to be in person. And that means we are hanging out at stations, and then they get toned out, and we jump at fire engines, and I watch them do really cool stuff, and then we debrief. And when those very unfortunate events happen, we've earned and we've created those relationships to show up and have the walkout. So similar to the old military mindset or the Wildland mindset of shut up and dig, you're a Pulaski motor, you're not paid to think, let alone feel. We're changing that culture. But culture changes slowly. Quite frankly, the culture at TM is changing quite quickly, and I'm very honored to be a part of that. I just wanted to show you a couple pie charts of what we've been doing. And in 21, I contributed 645 hours to the service up there. Already in 2022, it is March 1st, I have 179.5 hours of being out in the field, immersed, doing the work. And part of that does include the critical incidents. But when those critical incidents are starting to happen now, that phone call happens almost immediately. And there's relationships with the battalion chiefs, there's relationships with the captains who are on shift and say, hey, we had one of those calls. And typically those incidences are when a crew has to deal with a suicide. And not all suicides are created equal. Some of them really create, to Chief Moore's point, a residue, those calls that you'll remember for your career. So that's when I get a call. That's when I get to show up. When there are pediatric calls and kid calls, those hit differently. Those leave those residues. So I get to show up for those. And when there are the calls that I say essentially hit that yuck factor, and only people out in the field would understand what that threshold is, and you know it when you experience it. And so those relationships over the last 2.5 years have been and will continue to be created so that when those incidences happen, of course I will be there. I'll be the first responder to the responder. But it is cultural change to where we can start to decompress the career and the calls closer to the moment so that our men and women can go home and be the versions of themselves that they deserve to be outside of fire and rescue. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments if there need to be, but again, it's an honor to give you the update of what we've been doing the last 2.5 years.
Thank you so much. And
Sure.
before I turn it over to my board, Chief, I want to thank you for recognizing the importance of this for our crews and for the region. I mean, you know, step one, acknowledge that there is a problem. And so that's just tremendous. Again, thank you, and thank you, you know, for the executive staff for championing this. You know what I meant.
I do.
Commissioner Lucy, I have you signed in first.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Nichols, knowing you and spending time with you and seeing what you've done, the programs you've built, coming out of the pandemic, I know through your slides, you showed some of the devastating effects that we've seen, but it wasn't just for the general public. I mean, I think our front line got hit the hardest. All of our EMS workers really, truly felt the effect because the mental health, I would say there was a coinciding mental health pandemic that went right along with shutdowns and masks and vaccines and the unknown and just the scariness to add to an everyday already traumatizing society. Do you feel that this is not going away? This is not going to slow. This type of trauma, this type of mental trauma that we're going to experience is not going to slow down. It's only, I feel like it's only going to get worse, and we've got to continue to not only. There's two ways we can be reactive to it and treat it, or we can be proactive and try to help mitigate. What are your thoughts on some of those programming? I mean, reactionary, we can definitely treat and just have work groups and stuff like that. Talk to me about some of the proactive measures we could possibly be doing to help some of these maybe new recruits, individuals that have never been on those types of calls, that are going to experience it, and how they mentally prepare and deal with that stuff.
Sure. Thanks for bringing that up. The reaction piece will always exist, and it needs to, because Humpty Dumpty inevitably will fall off of the wall, and we will need to put Humpty back together again. But the pre-incident plan is, one, it's cultural, and that takes time. And in order to start moving the needle on culture, again, it has to be relationship driven. It can't be the letters behind my name that drive this program. It has to be, we're sitting down and we're breaking bread, we're getting to know each other on personal levels, and then we can tap into the professional expertise when it's needed, right? So it can't be clinical, it has to be relational. But it's getting up on that wall metaphorically with Humpty Dumpty and having a talk of saying, tell me about the rest of you. because all the men and women of Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue they were a self before they became the warrior. The warrior is now part of the self, to Chief Moore's point. There's that residue that changes who you are for the rest of your times. But I'll be doggone if that's going to be the totality of who you are. That's the pre-incident model, is it's more psychoeducational and culturally based of trying to remind everybody that they are men and women outside of fire and rescue, as well as they are men and women within it. So it is that holistic approach of being a full-functioning human that I think is lost in these warrior-type servant cultures. Because we expect people to be on and have very little, if no room for error, let alone mistake. And that's great, and that needs to endure. But we have to be able to shut that off, because otherwise that starts to come out in our personal lives. Imagine that no mistakes can happen type of mindset at home on a Saturday afternoon. So the pre-incident education, and I think the new cultural change is to, yes, get our arms around these young recruits, and when they, in their probationary status and throughout the rest of their career. Our new leaders of this culture haven't even gone to their academy yet. So it's getting in front of that so that they're deeply steeped in whole humanness and not just being an amazing firefighter or first responder.
Great. Thank you, Chief. I really do appreciate all the work you've done, sir.
Thanks.
And Chief, and I want to correct myself. Recognizing the need. You recognize the need, and that's really where this started. It's so thank you so much for that, and again the executive staff of recognizing that. And I know we've had some great people in the Corps who have worked on this tirelessly, and also recognize that it's not just us. There's a whole bunch of people involved in this. First responders, hospital workers, to Commissioner Lucy's point, when the pandemic was at its height, those folks were stretched to their limits. Our police officers and many others. But thank you for acknowledging that. I do have a quick question, and it's probably more for the chief. If we have, and while I know how it works inside our organization, are you working closely with other organizations, Dr. Nicholas? So the example is, let me just the hospitals, because I know people well, near family, who work in the ERs, and it's very, very stressful. I mean, they see the same kinds of they're not on the scenes, but they end up interacting in many cases as well.
Locally, no. However,
okay.
Chief Kukulis and I were just recently talking about this is logically going to expand to be a community type of model. Some simple example is Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue has a close kinship with REMSA.
Yes.
Has collateral assignments, duties, and responsibilities with all of the other agencies. At some point, but culture changes slowly.
Okay.
It is very appropriate that we have community models. If I have anything to do with that, again, it will be relationship driven and not necessarily clinically driven, because first response folks, the warrior servants, you can't just do the usual medical model of wait till Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall. We need to be able to start shifting that needle well before there's an accumulation of that traumatic residue.
Right.
So, no.
Okay.
And most likely, yes, in the future. One other feather that I do have in my hat, or just job duty, is that this model that I work with, Truckee Meadows, I also apply to BLM Wildland Fire. Okay. And that is a pre-incident trauma model, because the trauma will always happen.
So I know, commissioners, that we have a program at the SO. I know the sheriff has instituted a program, but maybe what we need to do as county commissioners, and step away from the fire board for just a second, maybe as county commissioners, we need to engage our community in a different way, and perhaps Dr. Nicholas can help us, and we can work backwards with the manager and try to figure out how we can be the impetus for these kinds of programs in the community, so that we're not leaving anybody out, that we recognize the need in the entire community.
It's an honor to do the work.
Okay.
I'm easy to find.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I appreciate it.
Have a great
Commissioners,
day.
anything else for Dr. Nicholas?
Have a great day.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief. Thank you, Dr. Nicholas.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief,
Mr.
proceed.
Chairman, I'm going to skip item 3 because I think it's fairly self-explanatory. And,
Yes.
just basically touch on Mount Rose Highway traffic safety. I believe Commissioner Lucy asked me to get our organization into the traffic safety planning process with NDOT. I met with one of their consultants and NDOT staff. Unfortunately, as you well know, that improvements in traffic safety come very slowly. And they're going to continue to evolve slowly because when the growth comes, infrastructure follows. Fortunately, that's kind of how it is with fire, too. I think the best thing we can do as an agency is insert ourselves into the discussions. But what I mentioned to NDOT is that, and this kind of really ties into what Dr. Nicholas says, we see on a highway some of the worst things that can happen to human beings. Yes. And I'm not sure that it's not always road engineering issues. I see it as being speed. I see it as being alcohol behind the wheel. And I think where we can, as an organization, really contribute is to talk about prevention. And I tell you, I drive the speed limit into work, and people are passing me like I'm standing still, literally going 15, 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. So I think that there are improvements coming to the Mount Rose corridor. Traffic calming certainly has to be one of them, and speed reduction. I understand that they have some roundabouts planned for some spots along Mount Rose. But still, with the best engineering, I still see the problem of driver attitude as being a predominant cause of why bad accidents happen. And I don't know how to correct that. I know that there are law enforcement issues. I'm sure NHP is up to its eyeballs with writing speeding tickets. Because you could stand in one spot for 60 seconds and pick out maybe 10 speeders. Severe speed. So that's how I see us being involved in a prevention aspect, because we're not engineers that don't necessarily know what the best solution is along a highway to slow people down. But we can talk about the horrific things that we've seen. Maybe we can affect one or two people to get them to slow down, to not drink, to think twice about getting in the car when you've been in a bar. I can't tell you, and I know my staff has seen these stories. They've lived these stories and these incidents. I know I have. It is, I don't know how to say it, that a significant cause of death in this state, of traffic accidents. So I'll leave it at that. Just know that we're engaged now with NDOT and their planning, and we'll continue to advocate for safety improvements. But I want to push the prevention aspect to the extent that I can.
No, and thank you so much, Chief. I'm thankful that you're engaged, and I appreciate Commissioner Lucy bringing this back. We have the same issues on Pyramid Highway, and while I don't disagree that speeding is at the center of many of these issues, and of course impaired driving, there still are a number of roadways that have experienced a lack of attention to capacity issues, and we've seen tremendous growth throughout the community, and I think, commissioners, everybody knows we don't cause growth. We have to respond to it, but at the same time, Chief, I'm appreciative that the fire service is willing to have these conversations about how can we make these corridors safer. We've had the same conversation. I've had them with the crews out in Spanish Springs, 46, about some of the changes that have been proposed and the concern of those right-of-ways being safer. So I look forward to having this conversation again and again, and again.
Right.
Okay. Commissioners, anything for Chief at this point? Okay. Chief, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Vice Chair Hill to propose to you, Chief and Commissioners, a block vote.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to propose that we block items 11, 12, and 13 for one
Okay.
vote.
Second.
Okay. Chief, would you do me a favor and would you read in items 11, 12, and 13 into the record for the clerk, and then we will ask for public comment and then bring it back to the board for any discussion on any of those items.
Item 11 is a recommendation to approve a fourth Wildland squad comprising of 5 positions, including 1 squad boss with a salary range of $55,806.40 to $72,113.60, and 4 crew members with a salary range of $43,243.20 to $56,139.20, all with regular NV PERS. Item 12 is a recommendation to award a bid and approve an agreement with Sentinel Builders LLC for the Spanish Springs Station Number 46 Remodel Addition project to add 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom addition for paramedic crew quarters in the amount of $385,666. And item 13 is a recommendation to approve retroactively a 4-year interlocal agreement between State of Nevada acting by and through its Department of Health and Human Services Division of Healthcare Financing and Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District to allow for reimbursements from the Nevada Medicaid program effective July 1st, 2020.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment on any one of those items?
There is nobody signed in.
Okay, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Commissioners, do you have any questions on either 11, 12, or 13? Okay. I want to thank commissioners in advance for supporting item number 12. Hopefully you will. Station 46 is, we're growing, and this is there's a great need and a great addition out there. So we have a motion by by Vice Chair Hill, and we have a second by Commissioner Lucy. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please affirm your votes on the screen. Motion carries unanimously. Chief, that takes us into item 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 14 is discussion and possible approval of the annual evaluation process for the fire chief, including questions and a proposed list of evaluators and possible discussion of goals and objectives for next year's review. The results of the evaluation will be presented at the April 5th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Fire Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, this process is similar to what we did last year, similar to what the county manager's process is, and that's really about all there is to say.
Yep, all right. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the chief on how this review will occur?
Nope.
Okay. All right. We're having a clerk change. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item? Item 14?
We do not.
Okay, all right, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. What's the board's desire?
Sir, if I may,
Commissioner Lucy?
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the approval of the annual evaluation of the fire chief.
Okay,
Second?
okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Vice Chair Hill. We've asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, I think. Please affirm your votes when they come up. It does. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Chief, item 15, is there a need for a closed session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is. Item 15 is a possible closed session for the purpose of discussing labor issues with Washoe County and/or Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District per NRS 288.220. I'll ask Mr. Carner to help me guide through the process here. So I believe what we normally do is take our last public comment upstairs and adjourn from the caucus room.
We go into recess here and then reconvene upstairs and take our public comment. That's what we've historically done, but lead us through, Counselor.
Yeah, correct. So essentially what we would do is move item 15 to the end, take
Okay.
the remaining issues here, and then we could adjourn from upstairs.
Okay, very good. All right, so we will just put 15 on hold for a moment. Chief, that takes us into item 16.
Item 16 is Commissioners, Fire Chiefs announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda.
Chief, do you have any such items?
No, sir.
Okay, Commissioners, any other comments?
Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Lucy.
A couple things that I would like to ask for agendas, being that we're coming into budget season. Is there any augmentations that we could utilize for growth and need of, one, the mental health response and support program that was presented to us by Dr. Nichols today, and then also anything we can be doing proactively to move forward with Chief Eisenhagen's work with fuels management and some of the power line mitigation issues at Ndpp Energy. What do we need to be looking at? So if we can have maybe some discussions about those budget augmentations, or if there's any discretionary funds available to the commissioners to support those programs. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, got that, Chief?
Got it.
Okay, good. Commissioners, anyone else? I have nobody else signed in. Okay, I have nothing. That takes us now to item 17. Madam Clerk, our final public comment. Chief, would you read that in?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 17 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items, with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk, would you please call public comment?
Mr. William Stewart.
Mr. Stewart, welcome.
Good morning or afternoon. I think it's already afternoon, isn't it? Thank you for your time. William T. Stewart for the record. Just a lot of great conversation this morning. I appreciate everybody's input and all of these, obviously, the things that have been talked about. I think the 911 dispatch center, with that regionally coming to fruition in the future, will be a great opportunity to bring on the other agencies like Reno and Sparks and the airport and everybody else. I mean, how long do we have to talk about this? Same thing. Obviously, great to see recommendation of all the hard work that people have done, both on and off the clock. And then for Pat, obviously, congratulations on his retirement, as well as Garrett. That was nice to see. So I want to bring to your attention NFPA's Outthink Wildfire, a call to end destruction of communities by wildfire. So hopefully I can get this in. The relentless toll of wildfire losses makes it increasingly clear that the U.S. is facing a deep wildfire problem. Experts warn that the destruction seen in the past 3 years, including well over 100 fatalities, 40,000 structures torched, and nearly $40 billion in insured losses, is not an anomaly, but a look into the near future. The alarm bells are sounding, calling for action. So they have 5 tenets, basically, that talks about what we've been talking about for a long time. So require all homes and businesses in the WUI to begin ignition resistant. Current codes and standards, as well as sound land practices, must be used and enforced. Fire departments for communities in the WUI must be prepared to respond safely and effectively to wildfire. And this is a big one. Government must increase resources for vegetative fuel management. And then the public must understand their role and take action in reducing wildfire risk. So NFPA has Firewise. I talked to Ron Boyer at NDF. He's on board with it. I know we had a fire-adapted community for years here in Nevada. We're transitioning more to the national model, which is the Firewise communities, which is great. It allows resources and communities to come together. The presentations I've done to HOAs are huge because we have to get the public involved as well, because you can't put a fire truck in everybody's driveway. That's not going to happen. So those are the things just we basically can talk about and go forward. I know that talk of another module for fuels reduction. Anything we continue to do to make sure the communities are going to be safe from wildfires is a step in the right direction. NV Energy is doing a great job. I know they can't put lines underground. A lot of times they're trying to think about how they can do that in California. It's just too expensive. So what do? We mitigate the risk underneath the lines, and next to the lines, and make sure whenever we can insulate those lines as much as possible. So those are things that are being done, and so hopefully you continue the conversation, not only here, but also with your constituents at the City of Reno. I'm going to talk to Jenny Brackets this week about the same issue as well, and then also with Sparks, and I know the Airport Authority too. So I just thank you for your time. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Thomas Daly?
Mr. Daly, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, Tom Daly from the Estates of Mount Rose. And as a matter of full disclosure, a Republican candidate for Nevada Assembly District 26, I ask that my comments which follow be entered into the record. On the issue of NDOT proposals to improve safety on Mount Rose Highway, which is on today's agenda, NDOT is apparently missing in action. How telling. Over the past 6 years, Mount Rose Highway from Thomas Creek Road to the Mount Rose Ski Resort has experienced multiple fatalities, accounting for 7 deaths. 3 of those deaths occurred at the intersection of Callahan Road and Mount Rose Highway. I transit that intersection every day. There is no traffic signal there. There is no roundabout there. Roadway lighting is poor, and there are very short deceleration lanes. While Mount Rose Highway speed limit is 55 miles an hour, the downhill portion results in speeds of greater than 70 miles per hour on a routine basis. NDOT has been studying the Mount Rose Highway safety issue for 3 years. To date, not a single recommendation from those 2 studies has yet to be implemented. And per the last briefing, which was August of 2021, improvements will not start until April of 2023, some 14 months from now. I can assure you, if these deaths were occurring in Clark County, this project or a similar project would be fast-tracked. But because it's in Washoe County, it is getting slow-walked by NDOT. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you pick up the phone and call the governor and tell him to light a fire under NDOT and start these improvements next month. Not everything has to be done at once. They can be done sequentially, but they will have a positive effect on those who have to travel this highway of death every day. And if the governor is reluctant, tell him there is a solution for that, and that solution is coming on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
No one else has signed in.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? It has not spoken. Okay, we will close public comment. And what we will do now, commissioners, is we will go into recess. We'll take one more final public comment, but I thought it was important to hear those 2 comments down here. We'll go in, I'm sorry? Go into recess, a motion? Okay. Yes, and that, I think that's appropriate. Commissioner Lucy, would you lead us into a
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we move into closed session for a purpose of discussing labor issues for Washoe County and Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District.
Second.
Okay, so a motion and a second. I think we've taken public comment. Do we have any public comment on that? Okay, all right. So we will. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we will go into recess and reconvene after our closed session. Thank you so much.